Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back. Jazakallah khair for giving feedback and helping us to learn in a better way. In the previous class, alhamdulillah, we've done simple sentences using hada and dhalika and asking questions and giving answers. And just mentioned in the previous session that most of the nouns what we used were indefinite. So what is indefinite? Indefinite noun is called al-ismun nakira. So if you can remember, it's fine. Otherwise, inshallah, we'll keep practicing and you will get used to these words. So it's called al-ismun nakira. And we got a definite noun. So definite noun is called in Arabic as al-ismul ma'arifa. Al-ismul ma'arifa. So what is an indefinite noun? Al-ismun nakira is a non-specific noun, or what you call as a common noun. What do you mean? Really mean you don't mean someone or somebody. For example, if I use these words in the previous sentences, like miftahun, a key, could be any key, a house, a boy, a desk, a masjid, babun, sarirun. And if you see here, all the words which are indefinite, which are not, we don't particularly mean that specific house, key, or whatever, it ends with double dhamma. So that is the sign of indefinite, double dhamma. So when you see a double dhamma at the end of the noun, that's a sign of indefinite. And most of the nouns in the natural state have got double dhamma. Something happens and then the sign changes. So this sign of indefinite applies to all the nouns, and if you remember, except the names of the persons like Hamidun, Aliyun, Muhammadun, Khalidun, Nasirun. So in these cases, because these are names of specific person, the double dhamma rule does not apply. Other than that, if you see a double dhamma or double fatha or double kasra, so that is a sign of indefinite. So coming to just have a look here. It's miftahun najmun, maktabun sarirun kitabun, a sign of all indefinite. So how do we make these indefinite nouns definite? So when we mean that this particular book, this particular house, how do we do it in Arabic? Inshallah, we're going to learn in detail today. So definite noun, or al-ismul ma'arifa, remember, is made by adding a definite article which is called al. So if you add al to any indefinite noun, which has double tanween, then that double tanween changes into a single dhamma. Let's see how it happens. So if we got baitun, so indefinite, got double dhamma. So if we add al, so what happens is al baitun, it becomes al baitu. So al gets attached, then dhamma gets shifted to a single dhamma. Then al baitun is a house, and it changes into the house, that particular house. The reason why it changes from double dhamma to single dhamma is just now we said double dhamma is a sign of indefinite and al is a sign of definite. So the both can't coexist in the same word. So when al comes, the double dhamma or double tanween changes into a single dhamma, fatha or kasra. So you got to remember. Let's do some practice inshallah. So if you see a miftahun, so how do we make it definite? We say al-miftahu. Maktabun becomes al-maktabu. Sarirun, as-sariru. Kitabun, al-kitabu. Najmun, an-najmu. So if you see, whenever the al comes, and you get a single dhamma. You have to remember this, inshallah. So we got to learn something more about the word al, which is the definite article. If you see, al is formed with two letters, alif and lam. So we're going to see each of these letters have got their own special characteristics, which is very, very important to identify, and it's very, very easy to remember, inshallah. So we will begin with lam. See what is so special about this lam of al. This lam becomes silent when certain letters comes after it. We have done this before, inshallah. It is a revision, and those of people who know already, it's a revision for them as well, inshallah. So this lam becomes silent. So, and the letter next to the lam, it gets doubled and you get the sign of shadda. Let me give you an example. So if we see this word shamsun, and if we attach al to it, so how do we pronounce it? So now if you add al to shams, so we don't pronounce as al shams, we make this lam silent and we give shadda to the word next to it, then becomes ashams, as though the lam does not exist. Ashams. So what are those letters where the lam becomes silent? So those letters are called huruf shams, and these are those letters. As I said before, you don't have to memorize them. If you just bring your tongue just behind your teeth or just in front of your teeth, those letters which are pronounced by bringing the tongue near in that position, like ta, tha, dal, zal, ra, zay, sin, shin, sad, dad, ta, za, lam, noun. All these letters are pronounced by bringing the tip of the tongue just in front or just near the teeth, and those letters are called huruf shams. The other letters which pronounce from the different areas of the mouth, and they are pronounced in a normal way. So let's practice some letters of huruf shams. If you see here, we pronounce this as at-tajiru. So we got a single dhamma, and the sound of lam is not produced, and the letter next to it gets a shadda. It's at-tajiru, at-thawbu, ad-diku, az-zahabu, ar-rajulu, as-samaku. So this is how it is pronounced. The lam becomes silent. It's just for the phonetic reasons. So because even the lam is produced in the same area, it's difficult to pronounce the same letter from the same area. So that's why the sound of the lam is made silent. So if you go to what about the rest of the words? How are they pronounced? So in the rest of the words, the lam is pronounced, and the lam and the letter next to lam both are pronounced. If you see here, if we have a word qamarun, if we add al and qamar, it becomes al qamaru. The sound of lam is also produced. Al qamaru. And what are those letters? Those letters which comes next to the lam, where both lam and the sound of the next letter is produced, is called huruful qamar. And what are those? These are the letters a, ba, ja, as I said, which is produced from the area of the mouth other than touching the tip of the tongue near or in front of the teeth. So let's do some example. Say al abu, al babu. So you don't say abbabu, you say al babu, al jannatu, al himaru, al khubzu, al ainu. So if we compare this with huruf shams, we can see the difference. See here, al abu, at-tajiru, al babu, at-thawbu. In both the instances, it is only making definite. There's definite article lam, and you got a single dhamma, but pronunciation is different because of the phonetic reasons. So these are called huruful shams and huruful qamar. So inshallah we'll practice more. So as we said, the al has two letters. So that is about the lam, where the lam becomes silent and the lam is pronounced. What about this letter? So we've learned before, the alif is mainly used to increase the sound length, like for example ba. So it on its own it does not have any sound, but in al we produce the sound a. So we are going to understand why do we produce this sound a and what is it called. To understand that, so first of all we have to understand this letter Hamza. How do we write Hamza? We write it like this. So how do we get this shape? So basically if you take ayn and if you chop the neck of it, and what you get is the letter Hamza, and it's produced as a. Because this is a very small letter, it is possible that when you're writing sentences we can miss it. So that's why the Hamza has got what is called as chairs to make it itself more visible. So what are the chairs of Hamza? So we got three chairs for Hamza, on top of which the Hamza is written is alif, waw and ya. And how is it written? On alif it is written like that, and on waw it's like that, and on ya. And sometimes in the few words it is written on its own, very few words, but most of the time it is written on top of a word. And how do we know when this Hamza is written on which letter? If you just recollect our session on understanding Arabic vowel signs, we did these signs here where the dhamma is prolonged by putting waw, fatha is prolonged by putting alif, ya is prolonged by putting ya, the sound of e. So these same letters becomes the chair of Hamza when these sounds come in front of it. For example, if the sound of dhamma comes, the Hamza sits on a waw. The Hamza will sit on a waw if there is a dhamma in front of it. It will sit on an alif if there is a fatha in front of it. It's like this is ba, this is ba, this is boo, and this is bu. So you produce the sound of Hamza. And if there is a kasra before it, it is written on ya. Inshallah. So that is where you write Hamza. And the most important thing what we need to remember with this Hamza is that it is always produced. The sound of it is always produced. Let's give you some example. It says mu sada. So if you see here, it's coming the dhamma here. That's why it's written about wow, mu sada. So shi'tum. So you produce the sound of Hamza. So fa tu. It's not fa tu. It said fa tu. So antum, antum. If you see here, classical example, Hamza is written outside and also on a chair. Antum. So this is about Hamza. So this is how it is written, and what is it called? It's called Hamzatul Qata. Hamzatul Qata, where you see the neck of ayn written on the letters, that Hamza is called Hamzatul Qata. And what is the speciality of this Hamza? The speciality is the sound of it is always produced, whether it comes in front, in middle, or in the end of the letter, in word. A sound is always produced. So now we come to this one. So we know when there is no vowel sign, we got sukoon. But when we are telling al, we are producing some sound. So what do we have here? So what we have here is the borrowed sound of Hamza. There is no sukoon there. There is a Hamza, but what we have Hamza is the only sound of it. We don't have a shape of it. We don't write Hamza on it, but we just produce the sound of Hamza. This Hamza is called Hamzatul Wasal. But remember this Hamzatul Wasal, where only the sound is produced. So that's why we produce the sound Al. And how do we write this Hamzatul Wasal? So it is written like this. So what is this? If you take a sword and if you chop a neck, like from here, and if you put on top of it, so that is the sign of Hamzatul Wasl. Hamzatul Qata is a sign of neck of Ain, and Hamzatul Wasl in the Quran, what you will see is it is written like this. As we said, this is a borrowed sound. This is a temporary sound. What do we mean by a borrowed or a temporary sound? It means it is always written on Alif, Hamzatul Wasl. The sound disappears as soon as another letter comes in front of it. As soon as any letter, for example, like a wow, comes in front of it, what happens is this Hamzatul Wasl, it disappears and it is pronounced as wal. It is not like wa'al, it's wal. Let's do some example to get better understanding. So if you hear, we got al abu. When you get the letter in front of it, it becomes wal abu, wal babu, wal jannatu, wal himaru. The ra is missing, sorry. Wal khubzu, wal ainu. So we have to mention about this letter here, huruf shams, where we've already tell that the sound of lam is silent, so we pronounce it at-tajiru. So we don't produce the sound of lam. So what happens when waw or any other letter comes in front of it? So if you see here, the sound of alif is also not produced. So we got two letters now which are completely ignored. So what happens is we pronounce as though the letters don't exist at all. So pronounce it wat-tajiru, wat-tajiru. So let's do some example to understand. So wat-thawbu, wad-diku, wad-dhahabu, war-rajulu, was-samaku. So this is how we write and we pronounce it. In writing you write normally, but when you produce the sound, so you present the sound in a certain way. So just comparing with the huruf al-qamar, how is it pronounced? It's a wal abu wat tajiru, wal babu was thawbu. So this is what we're going to learn. So we've learned so far about Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Qata, and how they are pronounced in huruf shams and huruf al-qamar. So in the Mus'haf, in the Quran, you will see this sign written on a letter. But unfortunately, if you open the Quran Mus'haf of India, Pakistan, you don't find this sign. So that's why it becomes very difficult to identify where we have this Hamzatul Wasl and Hamzatul Qata. So if I tell you here to identify Hamzatul Wasl and Hamzatul Qata, it is very difficult because everything looks same. So you don't know how to analyze a sentence. So if you are trying to understand or analyze the Quranic sentences, what I would recommend is to have a Mus'haf where the signs are completely written. So if you see here, Alhamdu. So this is a sound of Hamzatul Wasl. So Alhamdu Lillahi Rabbil Alameen. So if you see here, you got Hamzatul Wasl and the lam. So both are made silent. We say Rabbil Alameen. But on its own, when it begins the sentence, Hamzatul Wasl, the sound is produced. Ar-Rahman. So we got classical example of all the Hamzas here. like Hamzatul Wasl, and we got Hamzatul Qata here. If you see here, neck of ayn is written and the sound is produced, so we know this is Hamzatul Qata, and we know this is Hamzatul Wasl. It is a borrowed sound, this is the original sound. Iyyaka wa iyyaka. Ihdina is a Hamzatul Wasl. So if you read Surah Fatiha now with the knowledge of Huruful Shams, Huruful Qamar, Hamzatul Wasl, Hamzatul Qasa, you can identify so many things, inshallah. So hopefully gradually we learn more. Try and practice. I know sometimes it can be too much information. Try and memorize it, try and repeat yourself and practice, inshallah. You'll get stronger. Assalamu alaikum.